everybody, this is Sarahscopic and you're watching Traffic Musings. I once again apologize for having this in the way and half of my face being in total darkness. As you can tell, the sun's very bright, and I found out a way to make it that it's not like, tearing my eyes apart. If I move back my chair a little bit, I'm able to finally get within range of this thing. So, unfortunately, it looks like to you guys that half my face is missing, but my neck is very thankful for the change. But that was not what I was going to talk about today. So I know I've talked about in previous episode or another previous episode about music. And I just decided I would talk more about music, because music is a topic that's so big and grand, you can't fit it all into, one episode. And I'm pretty sure even in that episode I alluded to other things I would want to talk more about with music, and unfortunately I can't remember what those are. So I'm going to talk about a topic I'm pretty sure I didn't talk about, but I will probably have other topics I will talk about with music later. I might do them sooner than later just because it's on my mind, and otherwise I'm going to forget about it. So without further ado, more about music. In this case, music evoking memories kind of thing, if that makes any sense. I think it will make sense once I continue. So they've shown in research, and you guys probably have seen it yourselves and have lived this yourselves, about how music there's a way that music just evokes in our brains where it's a very strong, there's such strong memories that can be tied to it. And we've all experienced this, there's maybe a song that we connect with one particular event or that one particular person. For instance, I think everyone has a moment where We Are the Champions was played and remembers that moment so very dearly, or probably several moments when that was played. I know for me, I think the first time I heard We Are the Champions, actually remember hearing it. I know I heard the song when I was younger, but actually had a moment to cling it onto was during theater in middle school, which in the grand scheme of things is not a big deal, but that moment seemed like the biggest thing in the world. We were all together, we were crying, it was the final performance of this middle school show that, if I remember correctly, I didn't even have that much of a part in, and we all just felt connected at that moment. It didn't matter what the context was, we all felt that connection, and it was a memory we all lived. I even remember what we were doing. We were all on stage singing the lines and hugging each other and practically crying. I remember that moment, even if the context of it was whatever. And it's interesting to see more about that. For example, you see how they've shown with elderly people who maybe either are suffering from some form of dementia, or maybe some other form of mental illness that renders them that they don't speak a lot, or they don't remember a lot, they don't interact much, suddenly hear a song, and all of a sudden everything's different, and their face brightens up, and they suddenly they're able to move, kind of thing. And it's interesting. It's interesting how music can do that. It can heal people too, which is just so fascinating to me. And also, there's a cultural significance, I think, with music. Well, not that I think, there is a cultural significance with music, which is why it does have that sort of healing power, because as much as I think people don't usually want to think about it, especially in our day and age, community is a huge component of our health. It actually kind of relates back into my earlier episode about transhumanism, this idea of community and how we're becoming more global. We are still very community-oriented creatures, and so as a result, we are very oriented in our time and place for things and what has happened. So for instance, my generation remembers 9/11 very, very distinctly. That was our generational trauma, for instance. But we also remember some of the music from our age. That's why you'll hear us, sing really hold on to Britney Spears, NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, and stuff like that. And the generation after us is going to have the same thing that happen to them. But what I find really interesting when it comes to music and generation and stuff like that is there's more music being produced now, in my opinion, than was kind of really ever there, long time ago. Not that there wasn't music being created, but it definitely was not being let me put it this way. There's more mass-produced music nowadays than there was back a long time ago. And so, but I'm wondering what the result of that is going to be, because, you think of our, my parents' generation, and yes, there were tons of music that probably no one even knew of, but there were still the big hits that everyone had clung to. The Beatles were a huge hit, and so it's one of those cultural, music phenomenons that everyone thinks about it and holds on to. And even, way before then, there was, tons of, there's just cultural significance with music and such. But our generation, because of how mass-produced music is, and how easy it is to almost, to cling to a genre, for instance. I mean, that's kind of a new phenomenon when you think about it. This whole idea of clinging to a genre of music. I mean, you think about several, many, decades ago, and yes, there were different genres, but, every decade was defined by a genre. And our current, years of, in our current decade, that's not really the case, because there's so many genres that people can cling to, and also there's so many mass-produced genres. It's not even just that there's, because obviously, country has existed for a long time, and, pop has kind of transformed over the years, and so people would say that pop is what pop is today is kind of our culture of music, but is it really? Because it is mass-produced, but there's so many other types of music, and it's interesting to think about. And so what I'm leaning into is this question of, what kind of actually, in a sense that probably isn't going to make sense right away, what is music therapy going to look like for our generation? The reason I say this is because I don't know that much about music therapy. And so anyone who, if any of my viewers are in music therapy or have knowledge about it, please feel free to comment below. My only knowledge of music therapy comes from actually working as an intern with a music therapist. I wasn't working in a music therapist's office. I was working in a place where there was a music therapist. And, obviously, I think everyone works differently, but with her, it was very much you had to be in tune with the culture and the music of the people you were talking to. And so she learned older songs of the generations of the people she was serving. And that was part of music therapy, which makes sense, as I said, about the whole culture and cultural phenomenon of music. But what interests me is, so what's it going to look like for our generation? Because I can tell you that, if they just go by popular songs, I know for me and for several of my good friends, that's not what's going to fly, because I don't listen to the popular songs. And so even listening to Britney Spears actually won't do me much good, because I listen to Britney Spears, but not really that religiously. And so, yeah, certain music I guess will key into my childhood, but I wouldn't say those are the songs that really bring me back, it's different artists that they're indie, but they're also just not popular. I don't know how else to describe them. I think I've talked to death about my eternal love for Vienna Tang, but she's certainly not probably going to be in the music books of music therapists, way into the future. But if I'm an older person who needs music therapy for whatever reason, or it's just engage in it, her music would be what takes me back emotionally to a place, that they want me to be in. But if I can't say that, for instance, because of whatever reason, how are they gonna know? And so it's just interesting to kind of think about, and so you can't really just use the popular music for our generation. There's almost more research to be done with it. So what's it gonna look like? And I mean, yeah, I'm oversimplifying it, and I also run the risk of being like, well, the Beatles were the only music that was popular in the 50s and 60s or whatever, and that's not accurate at all. I mean, my family, I was raised on Simon and Garfunkel, who, while decently popular, were also not nearly as well known, kind of thing. And so, it's interesting. And what's also interesting is our generation is so into throwback music, right? I mean, so many people, my age talk about, so for instance, actually, Beatles music might be what is still played for my generation when we're old, because a lot of people really cling to that music and such. Even if we weren't born in that generation, we were still somewhat raised on it. And so I'm interested to see, when our generation has children, what kind of music we're going to expose them to. It sounds like we're going to probably be exposing them more to our parents' music, especially because of the, perception of pop music these days, of how it's, it is mass. I mean, I use the word mass produced for a reason, because not all pop music is bad. There are certain artists on the radio I still do listen to, but it is more mass produced, and there is kind of, it's become less of an art and more of a science in some cases, I would argue, leading into the whole how pop music kind of can sound the same. And, there's lots of opinions about that. I'm not going to get into it at this point, but there is a reason I say mass-produced, and so I don't know and so I think as a result of that feeling, you know, I think it's an interesting question too. Do we not feel as close to the music of our generation because of that issue? You know, we no longer have the whole, you know, it doesn't seem, it's almost like do we not feel it's as lovingly made? I don't know. But at the same time, you know, there's so many other genres people like, you know. I have a friend who, actually the person who composed my outro music, he's huge onto MIDI-style video game music. I don't even go into video game music. That's a huge thing. I know there are certain video game songs that would definitely resonate with me emotionally. And so I think that's gonna have to be a thing for people. I truly do, because, yeah, I can think of so much music that I was raised in my childhood that was video game music that, to me, would be so important, as far as part of, you know, my upbringing. It's not even think about that, you know. Are they gonna have to, I think, you know, they will need to keep that in mind, because it's such a huge thing, you know, and I think it'll continue to be a huge thing. And, I mean, video game music is still, I think maybe that's why so many people do cling to video game music, because unlike some pop music, it's not on that same mass-produced level. Even, you know, well, I'm not going to get into music theory. If you want that, I'll do that in another episode about music. For people who don't know, I studied music in undergrad. I have a minor in music, you know. I'm not, like, great at music, but I do have a minor in it, so I do know something of what I'm talking about when it comes to music theory. So if you want me to talk about music theory, I can go all out on it, although I feel like I should have guests on that could say a lot more than I ever could about it, so that's fine. We're running approximately the time I need to be at, so we'll just stop here. Oh, tell me in the comments music that inspires you, music that really resonates with you, whether it's genres or specific songs. I don't want to put specific songs on here, simply because YouTube is so funkified when it comes to their, especially with music. When it comes to copyrighted music, YouTube's really weird about it. I probably could mention songs, but I just didn't, you know, I just mentioned artists because I just wanted to leave it at that. So, yeah. Also, funny alert, there's someone in front of me whose license plate, I believe, says educator without the E, unless it's supposed to have an O. Is educator E-R or O-R? I can't spell, and neither can they, because they ain't included. It just says T-R. So yeah, I'm gonna guess they're a teacher, maybe. I don't know. What am I talking about again? Oh yeah, music. Tell me about music you like. Yeah. Even linked in the comments, you know, songs. I mean, linking YouTube comments, that's no trouble at all. Why don't you do that? Yeah. I hope you guys have a wonderful day. I hope something amazing happens to you. Without further ado, I hope to see you all in the next episode.